Imagine you are a police officer breaking into a house on Overland Avenue, trying to focus and avoid getting shot by the perpetrator. Your nose is filled with a pungent chemical smell that makes your eyes water. The smell is coming from the bathroom. Opening the bathroom door, you would give anything for this to be a horror movie scenario and not reality. Marcus Jones, a 34-year-old man of Jamaican descent, stood over a bathtub filled with a murky liquid in which the remains of his pregnant wife were dissolving. Welcome to the new episode. Please support the channel with a like and a subscription, and after watching, answer the question in the comments. Do you think Tamara could have recognized the danger coming from her own husband? Let's begin. Thank you for watching. Tamara Jones was the embodiment of the American dream for many young women who came to the United States in search of a better life. 26 years old and originally from a small town in Georgia, she moved to Miami 3 years ago with her future husband, Marcus. Tamara worked as an administrator at a dental clinic on Biscayne Boulevard and was known for her smile and openness. Her colleagues described her as a cheerful girl who always found time to help others, whether it was advice on choosing cosmetics or just a friendly chat over lunch. She had the typical dreams of a young woman of the 21st century: a beautiful home, a successful career, a strong family, and, of course, the flawless appearance so actively promoted by social media. By the beginning of 2019, Tamara was 5 months pregnant with her first child. She and Marcus had already chosen a name for their daughter, Emma. The nursery in their modest home on the outskirts of Miami was half finished. Pink wallpaper with unicorns, a white crib from IKEA, boxes of toys and clothes that Tamara enthusiastically bought every week. Their neighbors on Overland Avenue knew the young couple as quiet, polite residents who rarely threw loud parties and always said hello when they saw each other. Marcus presented himself as a specialist in aesthetic medicine, although no one knew exactly where he worked. He often mentioned that he conducted consultations at home, helping women with various cosmetic procedures at affordable prices. But behind the facade of a successful specialist lay a completely different reality. Marcus Jones had never received any medical training, did not have a license to perform any medical procedures, and was, in fact, a fraudster who profited from the desperation of women who dreamed of having the perfect body but could not afford legal surgery. He arrived in the United States from Jamaica in 2012 on a tourist visa and remained illegally. Over the next few years, he scraped by doing odd jobs, working as a loader, car washer, and handyman on construction sites. However, Marcus always believed he was capable of more. And when he met a group of underground cosmetologists performing illegal silicone injections in 2016, his life changed. In the spring of 2019, Tamara began to talk more and more about wanting to have her buttocks enlarged after giving birth. She spent hours studying before and after photos on Instagram, saving images of celebrities with curvy figures, and discussing with her friends which clinic would be best to go to. The legal Brazilian butt lift procedure in licensed clinics in Miami cost between $8,000 and $15,000, which was completely out of reach for a young family barely making ends meet. Marcus observed his wife's growing desire and saw in it an opportunity not only to save money, but also to demonstrate his supposed professional skills. Over the course of several weeks, Marcus methodically laid the groundwork for his plan. He brought home printed, fake certificates for supposedly prestigious medical courses in Jamaica and the Dominican Republic. He showed Tamara wads of cash, claiming he had earned it from private clients who were incredibly satisfied with the results. He told impressive stories about how he helped women gain self-confidence using special terms: substance viscosity, dermal layer, hydrostatic pressure, post-operative compression. For Tamara, who worked as a dental administrator and had a basic understanding of medical procedures, these terms sounded convincing and professional. Marcus explained that he worked exclusively with Latin American clients who did not trust official clinics for fear of deportation, and therefore his practice remained invisible to the general public. Gradually, step by step, he destroyed her healthy skepticism and strengthened her belief in his competence. On Friday, June 21st, Tamara returned home from work around 6 in the evening. A light ocean breeze brought coolness after a hot Florida day, with the temperature dropping to a comfortable 28 degrees. She was excited about the upcoming weekend. She and Marcus were planning to go to South Beach to walk along the ocean and take pictures for the family album. But when she entered the house, Marcus greeted her with an unexpected offer. He said he was ready to give her a buttock augmentation completely free of charge, right now, and that he was a true professional, trained by the best specialists. Marcus explained that he had all the necessary equipment, high-quality medical silicone, and painkillers. He assured her that the procedure would take no more than an hour, would be completely safe for her and the baby, and that Tamara would be able to fulfill her dream without waiting until the end of her pregnancy and without spending a fortune. Tamara hesitated. She knew that pregnancy imposed serious restrictions on any medical intervention, but Marcus was persistent and persuasive. He showed her photos of his alleged clients, although in reality these photos had been stolen from the profiles of legitimate cosmetic surgeons. He described the procedure in such detail and with such confidence, using medical terms, that Tamara began to believe in his competence. In addition, the idea that she would be able to regain her figure immediately after giving birth and would not need a long recovery period seemed incredibly appealing. After several hours of persuasion, around 9 in the evening, Tamara agreed. On Saturday, June 22nd, around 11 in the morning, Marcus prepared an improvised operating room in the garage of their house. He covered an old massage table with plastic wrap and laid out syringes, needles, cotton pads, and bottles of liquids on a metal tray. Tamara lay down on the table in light home clothes, nervous but trusting her husband. She did not know that instead of medical silicone, Marcus had prepared a mixture of construction cement, mineral oil, and sealant, purchased at a regular Home Depot store for $43. It was the same substance he had used in his underground operations on other women, some of whom subsequently suffered serious complications, but never went to the police for fear of deportation or shame. Marcus asked Tamara to take off her pants and lie on her stomach. When she expressed concern about the safety of this position for the baby, he assured her that everything would be fine, that he would put special pillows underneath her. Around noon, he gave the first injection in her right buttock, using a thick needle normally intended for veterinary use. Tamara cried out in sharp pain and instinctively jerked her whole body. There was no pain relief. The needle almost came out of the injection site. Marcus grabbed her by the shoulders and insisted that such movements were extremely dangerous, that the needle could hit a major nerve or artery, and that it was necessary to immobilize her body for safety reasons. Tamara, still in acute pain and in shock from the surprise, nodded confusedly. Marcus took out wide nylon straps and began to secure her body to the table, her wrists, ankles, and waist. He continued to speak in a soothing voice, saying that this was a standard precaution, that many clients needed to be restrained because of reflex movements, and that it would all be over soon. When Tamara realized that she was completely immobilized, a real panic flared up inside her. She began to beg him to stop, saying that she had changed her mind, that she wanted to stop this immediately. But Marcus did not listen. He said that the process had already begun, and stopping now would lead to deformation, that the procedure had to be completed on both sides for symmetry, that the injected material could not be left in only one buttock. When Tamara started screaming louder, he took a dirty rag that was lying in the corner of the garage and gagged her, securing it with duct tape around her head. The woman was completely immobilized, unable to call for help, while her own husband methodically injected the toxic mixture into her body. The next few hours turned into torture. Marcus used 4 large syringes, each with a capacity of 50 milliliters, filled with cement mixture. He injected the substance deep into the soft tissue of her buttocks, having no knowledge of anatomy, the location of blood vessels, or nerve endings. The construction cement began a chemical reaction with the biological tissues, releasing heat and toxic substances. Tamara was in unbearable pain, her body convulsing, her eyes filled with tears of horror. She tried to break free, but the straps held her tight. The cement quickly began to harden inside her body, expanding and squeezing the surrounding tissues, cutting off the blood supply and destroying cells. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Tamara had gone into shock. Her skin became pale and clammy, her pulse rapid and weak, her breathing shallow. Marcus realized that something had gone wrong, but instead of calling an ambulance, he began to panic. He knew that if Tamara went to the hospital, the doctors would immediately discover the illegal procedure, and he would be arrested. He untied the straps and carried his semi-conscious wife into the house, laid her on the bed, and covered her with a blanket. He tried to give her water, gave her several painkillers from the first aid kit, and prayed that she would come to. But Tamara's condition only worsened. The cement continued to react with her tissues, causing massive internal bleeding and toxic shock. Her body was being poisoned by the decomposition products, and her immune system was attacking the foreign substances, causing systemic inflammation. Around 6 in the evening, Tamara began to experience severe convulsions. Her body shook, and foam came out of her mouth. Marcus watched in horror, but still did not dare to call for help. By 8 p.m., the convulsions had stopped, and Tamara had stopped breathing. Marcus checked her pulse on her neck. It was gone. His wife had died, along with their unborn daughter, victims of his greed, ignorance, and monstrous selfishness. The cause of death was a combination of massive internal bleeding, toxic shock from chemicals in the cement, and acute cardiovascular failure. The fetus died of hypoxia and placental blood flow disruption several hours before the mother's death. Marcus spent the next few hours in a state of panic-stricken stupor, sitting next to his wife's body. He did not cry or scream. He just sat and stared at the wall, realizing the magnitude of the disaster. Around midnight, he began to act. Marcus understood that if the body was found, an examination would easily determine the cause of death and his guilt. He needed to get rid of all the evidence. He began searching the internet for ways to dispose of the body, reading forums and watching videos. He settled on a method of dissolving it in acid, which he learned had been used by some criminals in the past. Early in the morning on Sunday, June 23rd, Marcus went to 6 different stores selling building materials and household goods within a radius of 30 kilometers. At each location, he bought several bottles of concentrated hydrochloric acid, used for cleaning concrete and brickwork, as well as an industrial half-mask respirator with acid vapor filters, so as not to arouse suspicion by purchasing large quantities in one place. In total, he purchased 48 gallons of acid for $942 and protective equipment for $123. Returning home around noon, he moved Tamara's body to the bathroom. Using a regular hacksaw that was in his toolbox, he began to dismember the body. The process took several hours. Marcus had no medical or anatomical knowledge, so he acted roughly and clumsily. He separated the limbs, then the head, and cut open the torso to remove the internal organs. He put everything into large plastic garbage bags. Blood flooded the bathtub, the walls, and the floor. Marcus worked in rubber gloves and an apron, pausing periodically to deal with bouts of nausea. By evening, he had finished dismembering the body and began filling the bathtub with acid. He placed the body parts in the bathtub, poured concentrated hydrochloric acid over them until the biological material was completely submerged in the corrosive liquid, and covered everything with plastic wrap to reduce evaporation. Wearing an industrial respirator, he periodically checked the condition of the bathtub's contents. The chemical reaction began within the first hour. The acid corroded the soft tissues, gradually turning them into a gelatinous, gray-brown mass with a pungent odor. The process released toxic hydrogen chloride vapors that irritated the respiratory tract and eyes even through the respirator. Marcus closed the bathroom door, opened the window, and turned the fan on full blast. But the smell still spread throughout the house and outside. Over the next few days, he periodically added new portions of acid, stirred the contents of the bathtub with a long wooden stick, and waited for further decomposition. The bones dissolved much more slowly than the soft tissues, turning into porous, fragile fragments, but not disappearing completely. The teeth showed virtually no reaction to the acid. He planned to pour the liquid down the drain in portions so as not to clog the pipes, then thoroughly clean the bathtub and grind up the remaining bone fragments. But Marcus did not take several factors into account. First, the smell was so strong and distinctive that the neighbors immediately noticed it. Second, even a large amount of concentrated acid took several days to turn the tissue into a homogeneous mass, and the bone structures remained distinguishable. Third, the dissolution process itself produced so many toxic fumes that even with the window open, they concentrated in the house and escaped outside, creating a foul odor within a radius of several dozen meters. On Tuesday, June 25th, at around 10 a.m., A neighbor named Grace Morales, a 62-year-old retiree who lives in the house to the right of the Joneses, called the police non-emergency line. She reported that for the past 2 days, a terrible chemical smell had been coming from her neighbor's house, causing headaches and nausea. She also noted that she had not seen Tamara for several days, although the girl usually left the house every morning to go to work. The dispatcher recorded the complaint and said he would send a patrol to check it out. Around 1 p.m., 2 patrol officers, Javier Rodriguez and Cynthia Blake, arrived at the house on Overland Avenue. They smelled the chemical odor without even getting out of their car. When they approached the front door and knocked, the smell became even stronger. Marcus opened the door a few minutes later, looking agitated and alarmed. The officers asked about the source of the smell. Marcus explained that he was renovating the bathroom, using special chemicals to clean the old tiles and remove mold, and that it would be finished in a day or 2. When asked about his wife's whereabouts, he replied that Tamara had gone to visit her mother in Georgia for a few days because she was having health problems. Officer Rodriguez glanced around the porch and noticed several dark spots at the threshold that looked suspicious. He asked Marcus what the spots were. Marcus nervously explained that he had spilled paint while doing repairs. Blake looked more closely and noticed that the stains had a distinctive reddish-brown hue and a splattered shape typical of biological fluids. In addition, there were several flies circling above the house, which was unusual for this area. The officers exchanged glances. Rodriguez asked permission to enter the house to investigate the source of the smell, but Marcus flatly refused, citing the mess inside after the renovation. This behavior, combined with the suspicious stains, chemical smell, and swarm of flies, provided sufficient grounds for concern. The officers returned to their patrol car and contacted their sergeant on duty, describing the situation. The sergeant recommended entering the information into the database and continuing to patrol, but also noted that the situation required further monitoring. Rodriguez entered a detailed record of the visit, including a description of the suspicious stains and flies, into the system, and the officers left. However, this information became critical the very next day. On Wednesday, June 26th, the situation changed. Jessica Clark, the manager of the dental clinic where Tamara worked, called the police around 10 a.m. and reported that an employee was missing. She said that Tamara had not shown up for work on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday without warning and was not responding to calls or messages, which was completely out of character for her. Clark also mentioned that Tamara was 5 months pregnant and that they were seriously concerned about her health and safety. The dispatcher immediately linked this information to the record of the visit by officers Rodriguez and Blake to the address on Overland Avenue the day before, and forwarded the case to the Homicide Division with a note about a possible threat to life. Detective Robert Sanchez, a 47-year-old Miami police veteran with 25 years of experience, received the case at around 11 a.m. He immediately contacted officers Rodriguez and Blake, who recounted their visit, the strange chemical smell, the suspicious stains on the porch, and the swarm of flies. Sanchez also contacted Tamara's mother in Georgia, who confirmed that her daughter had not visited and had no plans to visit, that she was unaware of any health problems, and that she had last spoken to Tamara on Thursday evening, when she sounded perfectly normal. The detective realized that he was dealing with a potentially serious crime. The combination of factors, a missing pregnant woman, her husband's lies about her whereabouts, the chemical smell, suspicious bloodstains, flies, refusal to let officers in, created an emergency situation requiring immediate intervention. By 3 p.m. that day, a Miami-Dade County judge had issued an emergency search warrant for the Joneses' home, based on probable cause to believe that a person in need of immediate assistance or evidence of a serious crime was inside. Detective Sanchez, along with 6 officers, including a tactical support team, and forensic scientist Andrea Chen, arrived at the address at around 7 p.m. The Florida sun had not yet set, and bright evening light illuminated the quiet street where children played and homeowners watered their lawns. None of the neighbors could have imagined what was about to happen. When the officers knocked on the door, identified themselves, and demanded entry, Marcus did not respond. 30 seconds later, according to protocol, the team broke down the door with a special battering ram. They burst into the house with their weapons at the ready, shouting commands. Marcus was found in the living room, sitting on the sofa in a state of apathy. He did not resist arrest. It seemed that he had already accepted the inevitability of his fate. While the officers handcuffed him and read him his rights, Detective Sanchez and forensic scientist Chen began searching the house. The smell of acid was unbearable, especially near the bathroom. Sanchez put on a respirator and goggles before opening the bathroom door. What he saw made even this experienced detective recoil. The bathtub was filled with a murky, brownish-gray liquid with thick clumps of gelatinous mass in which large bone fragments, pieces of half-dissolved tissue, and teeth floated. The walls were splattered with blood, and bloody tools lay on the floor: a hacksaw, knives, an axe. In the corner were empty hydrochloric acid canisters and a used industrial respirator. The entire floor was covered with a sticky layer of biological fluids mixed with acid. Andrea Chen immediately began documenting the crime scene, taking photographs and videos, and collecting samples for analysis. Experts in protective suits carefully removed the remains from the bathtub, placing them in special containers. At the same time, a search of the entire house was conducted. A massage table with blood-soaked straps, syringes, a needle with traces of cement mixture, and plastic film with bloodstains were found in the garage. Tamara's clothes, cut into pieces and soaked in blood, were found in a trash can in the backyard. Marcus's phone contained a search history of ways to dissolve bodies, remove evidence, and avoid detection of crimes. That same evening, Marcus was formally arrested on suspicion of murder. He was taken to the Miami Central Police Station, where Detective Sanchez began questioning him. At first, Marcus tried to deny everything, claiming that he did not know what had happened to Tamara, that she had indeed left, and that he had no idea where the remains in his bathroom had come from. But when Sanchez presented him with evidence, tools with his fingerprints on them, his internet search history, neighbors' testimony that they hadn't seen Tamara for several days, suspicious bloodstains on the porch, Marcus broke down. Around midnight, he made a full confession. Marcus described the entire sequence of events, starting with how he persuaded Tamara to agree to the procedure, how he administered the injections, how she died from complications, how he dismembered the body and tried to dissolve it. He explained his actions by panic, fear of prison and deportation, and an inability to make rational decisions. He claimed that he had never planned to kill his wife, that it was a terrible, tragic mistake, that he was simply trying to help her fulfill her dream of having a beautiful body. Sanchez listened with growing disgust, realizing that he was sitting across from a man who had killed his pregnant wife out of greed and selfishness, and then tried to cover up the crime in the most monstrous way possible. The next day, on June 27th, Miami-Dade County Medical Examiner Dr. Margaret Liu began analyzing the remains. The task was extremely difficult, given the condition of the biological material after exposure to acid. However, thanks to the preserved bone fragments, teeth, and some tissues that had turned into a gelatinous mass but retained their cellular structure, experts were able to confirm that the remains belonged to Tamara Jones. DNA analysis conducted over the following days showed a 100% match with DNA samples taken from her toothbrush and comb. The remains of a female fetus at approximately 20 weeks gestation were also found. Detailed tissue examination revealed the presence of construction cement in the gluteal muscles. Chemical analysis showed the presence of Portland cement, mineral oil, and silicone sealant, a mixture that was completely toxic to the human body. Dr. Liu determined that the cause of death was a combination of factors: massive internal bleeding due to damage to blood vessels during injections, toxic shock from chemicals in the cement mixture, acute renal and hepatic failure, and cardiovascular collapse. Death occurred approximately 6 to 8 hours after the procedure began. The fetus died of hypoxia several hours before the mother's death due to impaired placental blood flow caused by shock and systemic disorders in Tamara's body. News of this shocking crime quickly spread throughout Miami and all of Florida. Local television stations broadcast reports from the scene of the crime, showed photos of Tamara and Marcus, and interviewed neighbors and colleagues. The public was shocked by the cruelty and cynicism of the crime. Women's organizations and consumer advocacy groups used this case to draw attention to the problem of illegal cosmetic procedures, which maim and kill dozens of women in the United States every year. Statistics showed that in Florida alone, between 2010 and 2019, there were at least 18 deaths related to underground injections of silicone and other substances. The investigation continued to work on the case over the following weeks. Detectives determined that Marcus Jones had performed illegal cosmetic procedures on at least 12 other women over the past 3 years. Some of these women, upon learning what had happened to Tamara, decided to testify. They said that Marcus performed injections in unsanitary conditions, used unsterile equipment, and had no medical knowledge. Several women suffered serious complications, infections, deformities, chronic pain, but were afraid to seek medical attention for fear of deportation or legal consequences. The Miami-Dade County Prosecutor's Office brought multiple charges against Marcus Jones: first-degree murder, murder of an unborn child, illegal medical practice, concealment of evidence, desecration of a corpse, and fraud. The defense sought to have the murder classified as unintentional, arguing that Marcus had no intention of harming his wife and that her death was the result of a tragic mistake. However, prosecutors insisted on the first-degree murder charge, pointing to the premeditated nature of the actions, the known dangers of the procedure, the physical violence against Tamara during the procedure, the failure to call for help, and subsequent attempts to conceal the crime. The trial began in April 2020 in the Miami-Dade Circuit Court. Prosecutor David Gomez presented detailed evidence, witness testimony, expert medical opinions, photographs of the crime scene, and interrogation records. The jury was particularly impressed by the testimony of Dr. Liu, who described in detail Tamara's suffering in the last hours of her life, and the testimony of Tamara's mother, Lorraine Simmons, who cried as she spoke about her daughter and granddaughter, whom she would never see again. Marcus's defense attorney, Robert Keegan, tried to portray his client as a man who made a terrible mistake out of ignorance and a desire to help. But the jury did not believe this version of events. The trial lasted 3 weeks. On May 11, 2020, the jury returned a verdict: guilty on all counts. Marcus Jones was found guilty of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances. Judge Elizabeth Rodriguez, considering the particular cruelty of the crime, the defenselessness of the victim, the murder of an unborn child, and attempts to conceal the crime, sentenced Marcus Jones to death by lethal injection. He also received 5 consecutive life sentences on other charges. The court's decision was met with applause in the courtroom, where Tamara's relatives and friends were present. Let's go back to the story for those who listened to the end and answer the question in the comments. Do you remember what the question was?